Hi, this is Andy. Most days you can find me working with a group of people, helping them learn how to improve their ability to lead and deliver. And if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you may recall hearing me say, in our project management courses, the majority of participants are women. And it's a characteristic of a trend that we see week in and week out. And project management, it's a rewarding and accessible career path for women to pursue. Well, because of that, I like to highlight women who are inspiring role models, particularly when it comes to leading teams and delivering projects. And today, I'm excited to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Molly Beran, who fits that description perfectly. Molly's not only spent extended time in the trenches learning how to lead and deliver. Over the last couple of years, she's also been a valued member of my speaking team, and she has expertly taught some of our biggest clients how to improve their ability to lead and deliver. In today's discussion, it's a conversation between friends who equally geek out about project management and leadership. I look forward to you hearing some of the lessons that Molly has learned about these topics. I know you're going to enjoy this. And before we talk to Molly about her career and lessons, here's a quick question. Do you know someone who's in college or maybe recently graduated? Now, certainly some people know exactly what they want to do at that stage, but my experience is there are a growing number of people who dread being asked the question, so what's the plan? When it comes to their career, they have no freaking idea. And I bring this up because we've recently released a new course entitled just that, No Freaking Idea, How to Navigate Career Uncertainty. It's a career guide for people who don't know what they want to do, and the feedback on the course has been fantastic. So whether it's you that's wondering about next steps in your career, or a son or daughter that could use some perspective, learn more by going to nofreakingidea.peopleandprojectspodcast.com. Thanks. Let's jump into today's discussion with my friend Molly. Molly, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Andy. I'm so excited to be here.
We don't run in, I'm sure this is probably what you find too, we don't often run into people who aspire to be a project manager at a young age. Yet so many people love it when they eventually get there. So how would you describe your journey to get into a project-related role?
Well, I would say that I was one of those college kids that had no freaking idea what she wanted to be when she grew up. And, that was not just true in college. When I was very young, there were days that I wanted to be an acrobat, and then there were days that I wanted to be a marine biologist, and then there were days I wanted to be a teacher, an actress. I never really knew what I wanted to do. And that actually gave me a lot of anxiety when I was growing up, because you're absolutely right. Everyone was asking me, what's next? What are you going to do? And I had no idea. And also, I had never heard of project management ever growing up. So there's no way I could have told people, oh, I'm going to be a project manager when I grew up, because I didn't even know that was a job. So for me, I spent a lot of time with our career counseling staff at UW-Madison, which is where I went to college. And I showed up, I took every assessment, skills inventory, had a lot of conversations. And eventually, my career counselor connected me to another young woman who had recently graduated and happened to get a job at a software company in Madison, Wisconsin. And she told me about her job, which was doing project management. And for the first time, I kind of heard a little bit of myself in what she was saying. At the time, this was a job that traveled a lot, and I thought that was really cool. I knew I wanted to travel. And, she talked about how it's about planning and laying things out and working with a team. I knew I liked people. I've always been a bit of an extrovert. So for the first time, I was like, hey, that actually sounds kind of cool. And at the time, I actually interviewed for 2 jobs. One was being a corporate trainer at that same company, and one was being a project manager. And they actually let me choose when they sent me my offer letter. And there was something about project management that I thought sounded really cool. So I just said, okay, let's start there. And that, I think, was really the first step on my path, was just trying it out. These days, I don't know how many people just jump right into full software implementations, but, there are certainly project coordinator positions that are out there. There's even some administrative type positions that have a lot of project management. And I think that using those as first level exposure is a great way to kind of try it out. And for me, that really helped solidify, yeah, I actually like doing this. Now, 2.5 years into it, I pivoted and actually did the corporate training thing for a while.
Yeah.
Also loved doing that for different reasons, but both of those two things together wound up setting the path of my career. I have flip-flopped between project management and training since day one, and now in my consulting firm and in the work that I do with you, I've combined them. So I am teaching project management, and that is where I found that I am just like happy as a clam and love doing it.
Oh, I love that story, Molly, because like sometimes I think sometimes people feel like you have to have your career just Gantt charted out. You know?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Here's my WBS and my my schedule, and it just doesn't typically work that way.
I mean, I especially in college, I ran with a bunch of people who knew that they were going to be doctors or nurses. So it was, they had their plans. They knew like each semester what exact courses they were going to take. And I'm here picking a major where I just got to learn as much random stuff as I could. Like, my major was cultures in an age of globalization, which clearly is a little dated these days. But, I did a little bit of econ, a little bit of political science, some journalism. I studied abroad and learned foreign languages, and it turns out that should have tipped me off that project management was a good path, because I feel like we dabble in so many areas in terms of getting tasks done, motivating a team. There's leadership, certainly, all over. And I find that flexibility is one of the key things that really makes a project manager shine. And being able to just sort of, take whatever comes your way in a given day, that variety is a core part of what we do. And it turns out like that is something that I've always really been drawn to, even though I didn't necessarily know project management was the thing that would make it happen.
Yeah. In fact, okay, let's build on that, because you started talking about flexibility. There's things that we've learned about project management. So what are some of the most important lessons you've learned about leading people and delivering projects?
Well, I'm going to go right back and say, like, flexibility is number one. I think when I first started out in project management, I heard a lot of the best practice information, things like, you set your scope and you stick to it. And I interpreted that pretty black and white at the beginning. Like, this is my scope. I stay inside this box, and like I say no, I say no, I say no whenever somebody asks for something. And I realized that, when I was dealing with a client, and I just said no, 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 no without considering them, that did not make them very happy, but it certainly did not like do wonders for our working relationship. And also it was a huge bummer. No one likes to be just like the face of no. I mean, some people, sure, they do, but ultimately I think it can be very draining to always sort of be on guard against things that you cannot do, and to always be just like living within these like black and white lines. And so as I've grown as a project manager, I've come to see that flexibility is actually key. And especially as we work in organizations that are adapting more of an agile mindset, there, it's never just about, oh, here's the exact thing. Like sometimes we don't even know what we're going to do in the beginning, right? So for me, I think there has been a real growth in understanding where can I be flexible and, certainly stay within my constraints, but really understanding how can I let things change or evolve and still be like a good project manager and still follow best practices, but also do it in a way where you start to feel like you're part of a team and really like working with others instead of against them. So flexibility for sure. I mean, I think that also speaks to the importance of collaboration and really working with the people on your team. I right now I have some clients that I'm working with in my consulting practice, and it's really become clear to me how much people really want you in their corner as a project manager. And as a leader, you need to be able to communicate that you are on the same team, that you are fighting for the same goals. Even if you do need to tell somebody no or set some limits or boundaries, it's really important to do that in a way that is collaborative and builds others up. And you talk about this a lot, is that it can't be about your ego. Like, it's not about me as a project manager. It's about the success of the team and the success of the project. So really valuing collaboration as a value in and of itself, and doing everything you can to be a part of a team that works together well, I think is another really key success factor for project managers.
That's good. I wish everyone listening to us could hear you teach on project management, because you literally could go on for 2 days on this, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah. I'm checking the time here, wondering, do I need to cut this off?
No, because there's no rush. But still, it's one of those things where, at its core, there's some simple things, and then more nuanced. It could go on and on, but it's fun to see that there are things that if we do these things, it helps us deliver, and if we don't do these things, like if we assume that scope will never change, we're going to be sorely disappointed. If we just there are times we have to say no, but we can do it in a collaborative way. That's a great lesson, Molly. So many things, and I always like it when we can give some specific management practices or things that we can do. So can you think of 2 or 3 specific management practices that you use when you are leading or trying to deliver a project?
Mm-hmm. So I think I have one that is about me and some that are about teams. So one practice that I use actually came from a bunch of research I was doing. I was putting together a class called Managing Distractions to Build a Better Workday. And in that, I read a couple of books. One was called Indistractable by Nir Eyal, who I think you've interviewed. One was called Things That Matter by Josh Becker. And he's a minimalist, but I think the point of his book was very similar. And through reading those, I really came to see that one of the practices I need to absorb daily is to really maintain my intention and my focus on what is most important. I manage 5 to 10 projects at a time. So there's always a to-do list that's 50 items long. But not everything on that list is equally important. And so I use a tactic that I've sort of learned from various different places and absorbed as my own. And what I do is I use a Post-it note. And on this Post-it note, I write 3 things that I need to get done today. The most important things that I don't want to lose sight of. And I ensure that I get those 3 things done every day. Mark Twain has this saying that the first thing every morning you should eat a frog because nothing worse will happen to you. So I put a frog on my list, and then 2 things that are just something I know needs to happen. And for me, having a small vision for my day is really important to, number 1, get things done, but number 2, really keep me focused and attuned to what is most important. And then, if I get them all done, great. That doesn't mean I close up shop for the day. It just means I've gotten everything that's super important finished, and that helps build my sense of resilience and accomplishment over the long run. Because I think that as a leader, that's where I need to support myself. You manage a project that lasts a year and a half, and it can just feel like a slog every day. But with little wins, I find that I can help keep myself continually motivated. So that's one practical thing that I do every day. In terms of managing others, there's a number of things that I think you can use in a team meeting to really help ensure that good progress is being made. One of them is something that we also teach in our courses, which is to always review follow-up items at the end of every meeting. So anything that is not yet finished, make sure that people know who's on the hook for it, who's got the ball, when are we expecting an update next. That is something that's so simple to do, and yet, things come up and people have to leave early or whatnot, but it's also about building that consistency with yourself as a leader. So showing people time and time again, I'm not going to forget things that are out there. I'm going to routinely bring them up. So I do think that is a really important practice. And then a third, I think, is really important for any type of leader, project or otherwise, but it's to really practice and share gratitude with the people that you manage. And that one, in terms of the specific practice, I think there are a lot of ways you can accomplish it. One is to send emails instantly when somebody does something great, sending it straight to them saying, hey, thanks for doing that thing, I appreciate it. Copying their boss is a great way to also like give them a little extra praise. Sometimes I flip it. Sometimes I'll write an email to somebody's boss about how great they did this thing today, and I'll copy them on it so they know that it's going out there. But I think like instant gratification is one. And then number two, I have a little thing that I do where, and I've done this at almost every job since I became a manager, is I have a gold star, like a little icon of a gold star, and I give out one a day. I don't always give one out. It doesn't always happen. But like when somebody does something that's like really great for today, I will text them or send them an instant message with the little star and say, you got the gold star for today for this thing. And there's no monetary value. It is just a pride thing. But I will tell you that more people have told me over the years that like that one little gold, like they printed off that email and they still have it 10 years later. Or, you know, they just remember it, you know, and some people think it's a corny thing or whatever else, but I don't really care because I find that, you know, paying attention even to the smallest things really matters and can really build a great working relationship. But, you know, it as long as it comes from the heart, right? I'm not doing this because every day I do a gold star. I'm doing it because every time I notice a gold star, I want to mention it. And I really don't do more than one per day. So if I've already done it and someone does something great, good on them. It's already gone for the day, you know. But it's very small, but at the same time, I think is something that you can't underestimate the value of doing very routinely and regularly.
Yeah, and you're not trying to give 50 away a day. It's not, you know, it's just it's a practical. It's doable. Right?
Yeah.
And since you do it, it kind of keeps you in mind like who's the star today, you know. So it kind of drives that. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Totally.
So when you think over the course of your career, what are some of the most important things you've done, or maybe happened to you for that matter, that helped you achieve the success you've had so far?
Well, I think first and foremost, I tried new things. So that first job that I took in project management, that was new. I'd never done it before. But I tried it, I learned, I stuck with it for 2.5 years. And that was really sort of my first foray into the career. The corporate training gig, again, I tried it, I pivoted. I did that for, I think, 4.5 years. And then I left and I tried consulting. Now this time it was project management consulting. So I knew some of the discipline. But when you add consulting on, there's a whole new level of client engagement, budget management, things I hadn't necessarily had to worry about when I was just insular inside a company. And after that, I took on my first job where I was actually charged with managing a team day to day. I had done management before, but it was much more like I'm a trainer and I also happen to manage a team. Whereas this one, it was like I was managing a team and like that was my job, managing the quality, the output, the work that was getting done, etc. And, you know, had some bumps in the road for sure. And, you know, so, you know, that led to managing another team in parallel for a while. That led to becoming a director of a project management group. And so, you know, it's something that I think in terms of what I did, I think I stayed open to the experiences. I stayed open to learning, and I said yes when new opportunities came my way. And that's, not all of them were successes, right? Like,
yeah, for sure, yeah.
Being willing to fail and looking at any time that things, you know, went wrong as a chance to learn. I think that's part, Carol Dweck writes a lot about growth mindset. So doing what I could to learn from those mistakes, sometimes as painful as they were, has really gone a long way to helping me learn and develop as a leader and now, you know, in founding my own company and running a consulting practice the way that I want to be doing it. So it's all been, you know, just subsequent yes and yes and yes to new opportunities.
And it would have been easy to say no to some of those, right? It just would have been easy. This is comfortable, and I know this, but having a bias for yes. And I always feel like even the ones that don't turn out well, nothing gets wasted in the sense of you can learn lessons from that can carry on to the next one, or man, I learned now that I don't want to do that or whatever. So
Oh yeah. I mean, especially non-examples, I think are helpful. Like when I've reported to people who in retrospect I just think, wow, I am never going to manage somebody the way that they did it, and even being exposed to that in the moment, it's painful and it stinks, man. I mean, we've all had a boss that we butt heads with, right? But it teaches you something about what you value, and it helps you decide who are you going to be. And especially in my early career, I didn't really know. I was trying to become little copies of all these other people who were successful and doing what they did without really thinking about, like, what's the Molly Beran approach for doing these things. And now that I've been established for a little bit longer, I'm starting to really hone that and to craft my own opinions of, okay, I've seen the best example and the worst example and three in between. Which of these am I going to pick and put in my arsenal for who I'm going to be and how I'm going to lead in the future?
I've admired that even when you're teaching one of our classes. You don't try to be Andy Kaufman, right? You are Molly Beran, expert in project management, and so I think I've seen it just in my window into you of how. What can I do to make this mine and make it, draw from what I've learned? So you do that well, Molly.
Thanks.
I've always been impressed with you also, as long as I've known you, that you're not one to get complacent, not only career-wise, but also just strength-wise and skills-wise and what you know. You're never satisfied with what you know now. So what do you do to continually develop yourself?
Love that you said I'm never satisfied. I have some friends who call me the Alexander Hamilton of our friends group.
That's great.
But so I heard a long time ago that readers or leaders should always be reading. And I will say that there have been times in my life where I have done a great job of reading the next great management thing or the next big business book. And there have been times of my life, like this past year, I was working on my wedding and spending a lot of time getting that in order. And I did not read as much management and self-development books as maybe I have at other times in my life. But in general, I do think it's really important to get new ideas into your head and to constantly be thinking about like how you're thinking about things. So I've done that by reading books. I love to read. I've always been a bookworm. But I also find podcasts can be a good way to scratch that itch. This one counts twice if you have PMP certification because you get your PDUs, which is great. So, that's awesome when it's a both and. But I also find too, especially with the pandemic, I found it was a time where I wound up getting more insular than I had been. Right. And, I founded my own company in the middle of the pandemic. So then it was like just me showing up every day. And it's pretty easy to get like lost in your own thoughts or to fall down a death spiral on LinkedIn, seeing who so-and-so got promoted to be in some big fancy job. So I love podcasts because they literally put someone else's voice in my head. And even if it's not a business podcast, I'm obsessed with Brené Brown. You know this. She has certain that are very business focused and certain that are more self-development. But I've found that like so much of self-growth has applications to business and vice versa. Like there are so many business lessons that are actually really good at like interacting with your married partner, for example. Right. Yeah. So I really look at it as a way to learn about the whole picture of who I am is in podcasts and books certainly. And I love taking a class every once in a while. So I have some relationships with other teaching firms where I can sometimes sit in for free. The PMI has a lot of great ongoing classes and even webinars that you can take for free if you're a member. So, certainly having a requirement to renew my PDUs every year really helps me in that as well to stay on track with learning. But it's something I've just always been really hungry for other people's thoughts and learnings and best practices and as I've started my own company and started writing a blog and stuff too, I'm finding I like sharing what I've learned and like having the comments get going. I've seen this on your emails too, which I love getting your Lead 52 every week, because it's not just you talking. It's like, here's what so-and-so had to say, and you keep the conversation going on LinkedIn. And I think we can all contribute to each other, So I love chiming in on that and also hearing what other people's thoughts and opinions are. And I think that's how we all learn best.
Oh, yeah. Something I admire about you is when you do learn something, regardless of the channel, you also find a way to teach it. And that teaching might literally be an example in a class, but it could also be your blog posts. It could also be what you're sharing online on LinkedIn and things like that. So there is something about, if you want to learn something, teach it. Right? There's something about you refine your thoughts and your thinking on it that way.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Since we've started working together and I've been a part of your teaching team, I find that is actually making me a better project manager, because as I'm kicking off new projects, I stop and I go through my mental list of like, okay, what are all the things I need to do? And like, did I review risks this week? And have I talked about the unopened, or unassigned tasks? So it is really true. I heard a statistic once that you remember something like 95% of what you teach. And I totally agree that like teaching something is one of the best ways to learn and relearn and to really put it into practice. So I really do believe that once you learn it, teach it, and then you will definitely remember it.
I think you and I have both joked that the conflict material that we teach has affected our personal lives in terms of trying to navigate conflict better. So it is one of those things where what it takes to be a good project manager spills over to so many other aspects of our life.
Gosh.
So,
oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. You are right. I've had so many conversations with myself in the shower trying to be like, okay, maybe this was not affective maybe this was just cognitive. This is just okay, yes, my husband is still a good person. Yes, we are still at it's incredible. But yes.
That's funny. Well, this is kind of an odd question, but if you could relive your career thus far, what would you do differently? Anything come to mind?
So in preparation for this interview, I've been thinking about that question, and I feel like I would love to be one of those people that would say nothing. Right, it was all worth it, and everything was great.
Liar.
And honestly, if I take a step back and really think about it. I think for me, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, in the beginning, I was very focused on like sticking to scope and being very rigid. And I think that was true, not just about scope, but about a lot of other things. And I think it's true, not just of my early career, but every time I started in on something new, when I started a new chapter, I was very much like, okay, I'm going to stay inside these lines. And if I could go back, I think I would like very, very gently whisper in my ear, maybe listen a little bit more than you talk. Think about why somebody might be so attached to this idea or being, and just like being more mindful about the fact that if somebody is in a conflict with me, it means that they really care, and to like look at what they care about, because so often I just jump to like, oh, that doesn't make sense, or oh, that person is just an annoying person or whatnot. And that's not actually usually the case. That's more me being lazy and taking the easy way out without really sort of wrestling with the tougher questions. And I think if I had done that earlier and more frequently, I think I would have improved the environments that I was working in. And I think I would have had some happier teams. And it would just have been good for me, especially as a young professional, to be a little more thoughtful and consider other people's reasons rather than just trying to make up my reasons for something.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of that we're just not taught in school, and so we have to kind of learn it this way, So every once in a while I hear someone go, if you had the ability to go back to when you were 20, would you do it? And I'm like, if I had to be the same idiot that I was then, no. Because some things you just kind of have to learn along the way. But,
yeah. Oh, I am there with you, man. Yeah. Not if I had to be the same person. If I could know now and be then, maybe. But even so, maybe. I don't know.
It's interesting. Being a business owner, there are so many reasons why your life could just be this. But another thing I'm impressed about you is that you have so many interests outside of work. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have my own firm called Projects by Molly, LLC. And in that company, I do some consulting work. So I'll do project management engagements, and I have a number of different clients where I come in and I manage projects, or I help grow their teams to manage projects. And, that's sort of like the way that I keep my blade sharp, right? And I also do coaching for individuals. So sometimes this really focuses on project management development skills, so helping people put a plan together, manage it, do risk management, and sort of build their skills in those areas. And then sometimes it winds up being a more traditional management coaching approach where we're talking about communication or how to present with their executives or how to build relationships with their boss. I tend to coach a lot of especially younger millennials who've just become managers or directors for the first time. And I feel a very strong affinity there. I'm sort of on the leading edge. I call myself the cool aunt of the millennial generation. And it's really in that time of life, I was really starving for a mentor or someone to help and guide me as I was learning about management and how to report up to other people and what happens with the people I used to be friends with who I now manage, et cetera and so forth. And so I love being able to provide that as a service to my clients and sort of be that big sister that I was always looking for. And, in some places I was lucky and I got some of that support, and in other places I wasn't as supported. So for me, it's really, it's very personally fulfilling to be able to provide that perspective. And then, of course, I teach. So I teach with you, and I have a few of my own workshops that I deliver as well. And, everything from project management to communication skills to managing distractions.
Yeah. And outside of work, you've been on the board of a theater company.
Yeah. I'm on the board of the Looking Glass Theater. I'm also a pretty active volunteer and member at my church, so I do the live stream for our services a couple of times a month. And I also teach some leadership and personal growth development. I facilitate some groups with an organization called the Wright Foundation.
Molly being bored and not knowing what to do is not something that's happening. So I love how you contribute in so many different ways. You've put together some products too,
I have.
Yeah, could you tell us?
I have. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I recently got married. And as I was getting married, I realized that I was really in the middle of one big project. And I also realized that I was learning and relearning some core project management skills throughout this time. So what I've done was I've compiled a collection of blog posts that I wrote about project management strategies for weddings, and I've put them all together in a volume that I'm now selling on Amazon. It's called From Vision to Vows: Project Management Strategies for Weddings, and it's really a one-stop shop for all of the lessons I've learned. I've included a couple of extra deliverables, a little dependency checklist and whatnot, and then I've also created an online course that people can take of the same name, From Vision to Vows. And it includes the ebook. It also includes a recorded video that I did with my wedding planner, my DJ, and my photographer, which is a conversation about wedding planners and whether you should or shouldn't work with them, things to keep in mind. And it's sort of like this inside industry perspective that it was so fun to record and just like hang out with these guys again after my wedding. But I really think there's a lot of valuable content in there, especially for anyone who is just starting to plan a wedding and trying to figure out, where do I need help? Who do I need help from? There's also a bunch of downloadable content. I've got a dependency-based checklist for what to do if you want to change your name, which I personally did not do, but many of my girlfriends did, and wound up telling me everything they went through, what are the orders they went through, etc. So I just made that into a PDF checklist as well. I have my budget spreadsheet, which I correlate with the Knot.com's most recent publication of typical wedding prices, so people can put in their preferred budget and see how much they can project to be spending based on other couples who've been married in the recent past. And then I also have an overview of my wedding website. So for people who want to design it but don't know what to put on there, I actually got a lot of surprising feedback from people who said that they loved my website. I'd never really thought about a wedding website before. I just put it together. Oh, thank you. But a lot of people said that they really enjoyed the information I had on there. So I recorded a video of it, and then I worked with my website vendor as well to get a little discount code. So if people want to try it out for themselves, they can get 10% off through that download.
That is so cool.
Thanks.
Here's the deal. For those listening, I've had the privilege of collaborating with Molly for a couple years now. I just highly recommend you follow her on LinkedIn and check out the products that she just was mentioning here. I put links to her LinkedIn profile and her ebook there in the show notes for this cast. So, Molly, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.